Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the last of our lectures for the 2017 Green Affair. I'm Greg Madison. I'm the chair of the William Patterson University Green Team. The Green Team, in conjunction with the Climate Action Committee, put on this event, as we do every year, so thank you all for coming and participating. I want to thank Whole Foods for their sponsorship for our Green Affair for the second year in a row. A very generous donation that makes this much more enjoyable and lets us roll out some bells and whistles that make it a lot more fun. The idea behind the Green Affair is to bring together people of different backgrounds to expose everybody to ideas around the idea of sustainability, the concept of sustainability, so that you can be exposed to things that you may not otherwise find out about. And I think our next presenter really exemplifies that in a great way. This big project that affects the infrastructure in our area has pretty considerable implications upon the safety of our water supply, upon the stability of our environment in the area, and so I will let our speaker get into that a little bit more. I actually first met our speaker when his wife was one of the co-founders of the Green Team, the Climate Action Committee here back in 2007. So here we are, a decade later, so my thanks to Barbara Stomber, who is here in the audience, for getting this all started so many years ago. And so hopefully we keep that ball rolling. And these groups are volunteer groups. They involve the students, they involve the staff, they involve the faculty, and they involve members of the community. So if you would like to join the committee and help us plan events like this, or help us shape the way that William Patterson can be a better steward of the environment, I encourage you to sign up at our table right inside the ballroom doors there, and sign up to join the Green Team. And it's just a way to participate and help to shape the way that William Patterson does what it does and the way it affects the students in the community around us. So I encourage you to do that, please. So a bit about Richard Stomber. So our speaker comes to us. He is an engineer, has his undergraduate from Stevens and a graduate Master's of Science from Brooklyn Poly. And he's a member of the Wayne Environmental Commission and a member of the Wayne Planning Board, and also a member of the Coalition Against the Pilgrim Pipeline, which is what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. So if you would join me in please welcoming Mr. Richard Stomber to the stage.
Can the gentleman with the camera hear me? Thank you. Good afternoon. It was great walking around and seeing vendors and different products for sale and everything related to the environment. I've lived in New Jersey all my life, and didn't realize until I was putting together some of the information that I've been always drinking Highlands water from the Highlands, from living in Wayne and also from growing up in Hudson County. So it's always been Highlands water. Hudson County gets 90 to 95% of its water from Hudson County. You know, it's been great living in Jersey for a number of reasons. Okay, I think it's a great state. It has a lot to offer. It has a lot to offer in its proximity to Philadelphia and New York City. But it has great beaches, and it has every once in a while, when like July and August roll around, I can't wait for Jersey tomatoes and Jersey corn to roll in and have a nice lunch with that. But one thing New Jersey, okay, disappoints me, okay, and it disappoints everybody who lives here, is that's because it's first in Superfund sites. New Jersey has 116 at last count Superfund sites. Second is California with 8 less. And it's unfortunate that the state has that many Superfund sites, and some of them are being taken care of, and some of them may be delinquent after a while with the present administration, okay, taking cuts in the environmental funding. Most of the populated, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the Union, and most of the people live in the north, and most of the people who live in the north live in the east. okay, and there's a pipeline that's planned to run through that particular area. And the pipeline is going to interfere, okay, with the Highlands area, which is the water supply for more than half of New Jersey, over 5 million people. Okay, that's one of the reasons, okay, we gathered together, okay, periodically with various groups and agencies, okay, in order to put a stop to the Pilgrim Pipeline. I'm going to be here with that. The way this routine is going to work, I'm going to talk for about a half an hour approximately, and then it's going to be a question and answer period. And Jerome Wagner, who's associated with 350.org, okay, is going to help me out in that particular regime. And if there's any information that you need later on, okay, the website, Stop Pilgrim Pipeline, is an excellent source for background material, for detailed maps to find out exactly where my pipeline is going, and for external information, okay? Information directly from the Pilgrim Pipeline people themselves, and they have a presentation they gave in Kenilon a number of years ago, but it'd be an interesting site to visit. Before I get into the details, let me just tell you who the coalition of against the Pilgrim Pipeline is. It's made up of a variety of groups. Okay, we've gotten great assistance, okay, from 350.org, Food and Water Watch, and the Sierra Club. And we were founded initially in 2014, and there's a coalition against the Pilgrim Pipeline in New Jersey and also New York State. And we're both very active in terms of getting cooperation from the towns that the Pilgrim Pipeline is going to go in through. We think that in various movies that I've seen recently, and discussions that I've heard about, and also the recent vote, I'll say, by Frelinghuysen in terms of where he stood on the Affordable Care Act and where he stands very recently on the Affordable Care Act. Okay, it's really the people that will eventually persuade the politicians. When politicians look out in an audience like this, okay, and they have a particular opinion, in my mind they say, gee, I couldn't buy that many votes to vote against. If this audience, okay, votes against the Pilgrim Pipeline, and I have a difference of opinion because I might be subsidized by different techniques, okay, I may not be able to sway enough voters, okay, to go my way. So it's by educating people like us, people like you may reference based upon the talk, based upon having other people visit the Pilgrim Pipeline site, okay, that people will get educated and learn what the bad effects that can happen as a result of it going through our towns. We maintain good relationships with communities, okay. Communities, okay, we invite them to pass at least a resolution. A resolution is a formal piece of government paper that says that this particular municipality, okay, is against the Pilgrim Pipeline. They can go a step farther than that, okay, by coming up with an ordinance. An ordinance is part of New Jersey land use law, where they can establish what is permitted and what is not permitted in town, or if it is permitted, where in town it could be. So the towns have drafted up, several towns have drafted up resolutions, and some have formed a committee, okay, of funding, okay, because this would be would go to court, okay, if the towns decided to sue the Pilgrim Pipeline, at least to have some backup information. Apparently what's been done historically, there are pipelines, oil pipelines, that had come through from western New Jersey to eastern New Jersey, okay, and they happened so long ago, people never thought about fighting the pipelines. But this is the case where civil action, okay, is very well aware of what's happening, and it's going to try to put a stop to it. So our objective, at the last bullet shows, okay, is what our objective is to stop the Pilgrim Pipeline. That is the objective of CAP, the Coalition Against the Pilgrim Pipeline. What I'm going to go into on the next few slides, okay, is what the resource is and how the Pilgrim Pipeline oil, okay, gets extracted from the ground. The reason I go through that is because it affects New Jersey in a couple of areas. One is that there is a small area in northwestern New Jersey, okay, where there is a pocket of gas that could be this process called hydraulic fracturing that could be extracted from the ground. And also in Pennsylvania, there are thousands of wells, okay, which require millions of gallons of water, Okay, and that water has to be sent someplace for treatment. And apparently it has been sent to New Jersey, to Carteret, Kearney, and Elizabeth for treatment in the past. And we'd like to put a stop to that. And the New Jersey Senate and New Jersey Assembly, okay, both established a law, okay, to stop that, prevent that from happening, from any water to come into New Jersey, at least, and put into evaporation pits, or to be processed through our water purification systems, and then, or deposited someplace in a downwater well. However, that was vetoed. That law was vetoed, okay, and it's no longer in place, so we're exposed to accept those fracking fluids. The process of the Pilgrim Oil and and also gas that's being extracted in Pennsylvania, okay, comes from shale areas. Shale areas are areas of sedimentary rock, which is in layers. They're about a mile or two below the ground, and they contain deposits of gas and oil. The first two deposits, the Barnett Shale, which is in Texas, and the Marcellus Shale, which is in primarily in Pennsylvania and New York, okay, they are gas deposits. Now, in the Marcellus Shale, which is in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania has no restriction upon fracking except for areas in near the Delaware Water Gap and the Delaware River itself. It's allowed in the rest of the part of the state. In New York State, Governor Cuomo has deemed it necessary to ban it, all hydraulic fracturing from New York State, because of the risk it serves to the people who live in rural areas who depend upon groundwater and aquifers for their water supply. And also, New York State also supplies water to New York City. So Governor Cuomo, rightly, I believe rightly so, has put a stop to that in the process. New York State was the second state, okay, to stop hydraulic fracturing. The first was Vermont, and the third one is most likely going to be Maryland. Part of the Marcellus Shale extends into parts of Ohio, West Virginia, and Maryland. And the Maryland Assembly passed a vote about 2 weeks ago, and it's going to send it on to the governor, and the governor is expected to approve it. And it was really probably a tough decision to be made, because that particular shale area in Maryland was a very attractive one and economically feasible to go in and extract that gas and sell it at a nice profit. So those are the sources of gas as a result of the gas fracking process. Where our pipeline is going to come through, it's going to rely upon Bakken Shale. Bakken Shale is in North Dakota. It's in a relatively desolate part of North Dakota, and it has a relatively large deposit there. So it's a very attractive place to extract. The extraction fluids, it's an enormous amount of water that's required to frack a particular well, whether it be oil, whether it be gas that they're fracking. It's typically it's about 1.5 million gallons per well, and 90% of that liquid, okay, is water. 9% happens to be sand, and a small percent, small by percentage but not by volume when you look at it, are chemical fluids to assist in the fracking process. They're in there for a number of reasons. So if you look at 1.5 million gallons per well and 1% chemicals, you're talking about 15,000 gallons of chemicals, okay, that are used to extract, to frack one well. Now, one well can be fractured a number of times. It can be fractured anywhere from 10 to 20 times. So again, take those numbers we talked about, 1.5 million gallons of water and so many chemicals. Okay, multiply those numbers by 10 or 20, and that's what one can expect over a lifetime. The EPA report at the bottom bullet there, the EPA report is documents. It was released in 2016, December. It has it's 600 or 700 pages. It has a 50-page executive summary, okay, but it provides a lot of detail in terms of the hydraulic fracturing process. And the reason why fracturing is required is because the gas and the oil are embedded in this sedimentary rock. And in order to get it out, you have to put high pressure. Presumably the pressure was as high as 15,000 pounds per square inch at certain times that they have to use. And when you do that, you always want to apply the pressure exactly where you need it. You don't want it to blow out a pipe someplace else, but there's always a risk in terms of that happening. This is a sketch of the process itself. First item that's done is that the well is done. It's done like most wells that we've seen conventional, where the well is done vertical, but instead of having a nice deposit here of oil or gas, okay, there's nothing there. Like a conventional well, you would put your structure up, dig down, hope to find a nice pocket. You've seen those pictures in the old days with the oil gushing out because it's under pressure, and then after a while you have the pump going back and forth to extract the remains out. Well, here it doesn't happen that way. If the pipe goes out 1 to 2 miles vertically, okay, then it goes out 1 to 2 miles horizontally. And what happens is there's a perforation gun that's put into the pipe, and it blows the pipe open in certain spots so that when the hydraulic fluid gets injected, it can go into these areas where the hydraulic, where the holes were, and creates these fissures. After that process is over, at that particular time the well is deemed complete, okay, the water is extracted. So the extracted water consists not only of the original chemicals, okay, and the water that was put in, it comes up with groundwater, water that was in the ground and was created as a result of the process going on. And that contains chemicals in itself, and it also contains some radioactive rocks, radioactive material. So the water now gets to the top and it seeps up to the top. In the meantime, we've extracted the water itself. This is just a schematic diagram of what's going to happen, what happened during the fracking process. There's 200 trailer trucks of water. It meets up with the sand truck and the chemical truck, and then that pressurizes the well. And then when the water is extracted, okay, the water is put into this pit. It's easy. It rests in this pit for a while, and then it's taken elsewhere to be handled. In the meantime, the oil now seeps up the pipe, and it's converted into stored into tanks, and it's taken away to where it's going to be produced. Now, in our particular case, that water is going to be taken out to Albany by train. So it goes from the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota, and it goes out to Albany, New York. And what's happening now is that that's taken on barges and brought down to Linden, New Jersey for processing. The fracking fluids that come out of the ground, it's interesting. You would think, well, how much water, how much of the original water that I put in, and how much of the water that was in there, okay, and created the process, how much of that will I get back? And it turns out in some of the fields, you only get back 15 to 20% of what you put in. So the rest of the 80 to 85% is somewhere in the ground and has gone someplace, and hopefully it doesn't go where we don't want it to go. Okay. The reason, if I just one more comment in the diagram, the reason why this is heavily shielded up in here is that the original pipe, when it goes down, okay, could go down through aquifers, okay, through a water supply, through groundwater. And the idea behind having that cement casing around is to prevent, a malfunction of the pipe when it gets subjected to this high pressure. Now, has anybody seen Gasland? Any Josh Fox movies with Gasland? If you remember when, sometimes that doesn't work doing that because people had a house where the gas, okay, leaked into the water supply, and a fellow could turn on his faucet and light it with a match and basically have flames coming out of his faucet. So as well as the stove, he could cook over his sink, So it's a process that, going back to the source of where the Pilgrim Pipeline oil comes from, it's an issue even back then. There are some regulations in place not all the regulations that we'd like to see in place. But in 2011, after constant hounding by Congress, the industry told Congress what chemicals they put into the ground. They didn't tell them the mix that they were going to use for a particular well. Okay, they told them, well, these are the list of chemicals we could put into a well. And there was 750. Not very much help. But some of them were known carcinogens. So the report, unfortunately, didn't specify the particular mix, but because it was considered proprietary and trade secrets, so it remains an issue today in terms of knowing what was in a particular well. Obviously, if some time downstream you wanted to treat it, it'd be nice to know what you were trying to treat. Now, the UK allows fracking also, and apparently the UK, has been, at least according to the documentation that I saw, only permits non-hazardous chemicals. So as we have to use, our process is allowed to use hazardous chemicals, the UK process does not allow the use of hazardous chemicals. So their extraction may be a little bit less efficient than ours. Their profits may not be as high, but what they're doing seems to be better for the environment and for the safety of everybody concerned. One of the exceptions, we hear a lot about this Clean Water Act. Well, the fracking process, whether it be oil or gas, doesn't have to comply with the Green Water Act and the Clean Water Act, excuse me. And the reason for that is when Cheney was a former representative of Halliburton, when he was vice president, he went out of his way to make sure that there was this exclusion, which we now call the Halliburton exception, that loophole that fracking didn't have to agree to the Clean Water Act. Drinking water is our most valuable resource on Earth. Certainly more valuable at times, in times of desperation, than oil. And it's something that we have to be very, very concerned about. As I had mentioned, sometimes you only get 15 to 20% of the original chemicals and chemical mixture and fluids that we put into the ground, and the rest, finds its path to another place. And don't forget that process is repeated. Could be repeated 10 or 20 times. Now, the sources of contamination could be in the process itself, where we wind up with leaks in the pipes. And also when you take the water out of the well, okay, and you transfer it to a vehicle where you want to transport it to for treatment or for injecting into a dry well, that there could be spillage on the ground, which could eventually leak into the aquifers. There's a fellow from there are various people who have gone on record, okay, primarily scientists, okay, and engineers and environmental people warning people of the process, okay, of this hydraulic fracturing technique. And one of the people who was renowned, okay, is a fellow named, he's a professor, Dr. Anthony Ingraffia, okay, from Cornell University, who was considered to be an expert on fracturing, whether it be fractures of metals or what, but his expertise happens to be in the fracturing of these pipes. And he guarantees that all of these pipes, okay, before they hit the end of 10 to 20 fracking cycles, okay, will leak. Okay, it's not a question of whether they're going to leak or not. It's when. You're doing this, you're stressing the material, stressing the earth, stressing the pipe, stressing the concrete so many times, okay, that's just not going to be able to take anymore. So it comes down to we have science and engineering on our side. Now we're getting into more details on the Pilgrim Pipeline. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about the proposed pipeline, where it goes, how many pipes it consists of. Let me just give you a top level. It goes between Albany and Albany, New York, and Linden, New Jersey. It's about 178 miles in length, and there were two pipes. Okay, two pipes. One pipe takes the crude oil from Albany and brings it to Linden, and the second takes the processed oil, whether it could be gasoline, fuel oil, kerosene, okay, and then would go north, and from Linden to Albany. Now, Pilgrim has gone out of their way to identify some items that we from the Pilgrim coalition of Pilgrim Pipeline would take exception to. One is that Pilgrim will claim that the pipelines are the safest. Our rebuttal is that they're not the safest of transport for minimizing spills. And we'll show you in a couple slides later, okay, that the worst transport, okay, for taking oil, okay, are the oil trucks that you see delivering oil back and forth to gas stations or locally or what have you. That's the primary technique, okay, that's the means of transportation where the most oil is spilled compared to the oil that's carried. So when we use the word safe, we're looking in terms of spillage. Okay, what technique spills the most oil as a percentage? Those oil trucks spill the most. The second one are the pipelines. The pipelines spill more oil over the years, okay, than trains do or barges do. Second item that we took exception to was that new technology will not detect, they said that new technology will detect oil spills, will prevent oil spills. We can't prevent an oil spill. It's a matter of how much is going to leak out by the time you catch it. And even if you catch it within, if you detect 1% of it, enough of the oil, okay, will leak out, okay, to contaminate, a water supply. Gas you don't have to worry about because gas is going to leak out and escape, but oil is going to not evaporate. Most of it's going to, stay on the ground or go into the ground. A new technology does not detect oil spills, okay, in time. You have these pump stations that are set up typically 10 miles apart, and you're looking for a differential, okay, in the volume that goes through, and it's just not quick enough to be able to track it soon enough. The pipelines will replace the oil bomb trains in New Jersey. Does anybody live in Bergen County? Okay, you're familiar with the what they call the bomb trains then? The bomb trains don't originate in Albany. They don't pass through Albany. The bomb trains pass through New York State. They actually run from west to east from the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota. They come into, they start going south near a town called Selkirk, New York, which is about 10 miles south of Albany, and then they go south, and they don't go to Linden. They go to Philadelphia to be processed. So even if this pipeline were to go through, unfortunately, it would not help, okay, the people who live in Bergen County in terms of the trains that go through there. So we have many groups that are fighting, oil transportation. We have groups in Bergen County that are fighting it. We have groups in all counties of northern New Jersey who are fighting the transportation of that oil. The unions claim that they do an excellent job to prevent spills, and we agree with them. It says but unfortunately, the installation and the process itself of soldering the pipes together and laying them in, the unions do an excellent job at their end, but their end is not the end of their end is not the end of the process. Okay, the process is that excavation, okay, or ground heaves. Okay, the pipeline is built on the Ramapo Fault. Okay, that there's other dangers that come in that account for approximately more than half of the pipelines, okay, that leak. The unions will get some of the construction work. There's about 3,000 jobs over a building season that are created. 2/3 of those jobs will be outsourced to Pilgrim's parent company, or joint company in Tennessee. So 1,000 jobs will go to New Jersey, and there'll be 50 permanent jobs that are created as a result of this process. In terms of jobs, I don't think people in today's environment who graduated from school ought to be pursuing a job, okay, in the oil or gas industry. Okay, renewables in the end result, okay, are going to be the way to go. Whether it's storage of the renewable energy in batteries, okay, whether it's processing renewable energy, okay, in solar, okay, and wind. The other item I think is too far-fetched also, where we hear of geoengineering, where we're going to plant seeds in the clouds or put some, I don't want to say paint, but somehow camouflage the clouds so they'll reflect more of the sun than is absorbed by the earth. It's like science fiction as far as I'm concerned, but if you want to read about it, it was in today's Times in the business section, and I've read other articles about it before. And we're going to talk later about how we plan to stop the project, but the key is to try to communicate with people who are somewhat familiar with it, and to have those people go out and communicate with other people. Now, that was the executive summary, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass around, and maybe it's too early, but just we're against the Pilgrim Pipeline. This is just a petition being against the Pilgrim Pipeline. You take a look at it, read it, just pass it on. Steiner, pass it on. We are speaking to the gubernatorial candidates to find out where their position is. I was down with other people from CAP to talk to Wisniewski, who's running for governor, and he is against the pipeline as it exists now. As it exists now means that it will be going through across Ramapo Mountain, sort of across Skyline Drive. So you wind up going, we'll see more details in the map later. But if it happens to go outside of Ramapo Reservation, okay, then he would be for the pipeline. Now, there are other candidates who stand very hard, no matter which way the pipeline goes. Okay, we're going to be, they will be against that. So this is maybe somewhat redundant, but again, two parallel pipelines. I had indicated here 2 feet in diameter. They may be less than that because on their website, Pilgrim's website, they said a maximum of 2 feet in diameter. Now, back in feud, crude oil, crude, has 2 characteristics, explosive and corrosive. The rail companies have found out their tank cars are corroding. Okay, they're being disintegrated by the back end oil because of its toxicity. It's just filled with chemicals, and it happens to be more explosive than gasoline. So it's got a couple of things that you would think would not be going for it if you're going to put it into an enclosed pipeline. That eventually the pipeline is going to corrode, and if it corrodes and it gets exposed, it could explode. And if it doesn't explode, then what happens is then it just, it leaks into the ground. It's going to affect the water supply of 5 million people. The southern portion in Scotch Plains, the pipeline that's going south, splits up into 2 parts. One part goes to the Bay State refinery, and the other goes to Kinder Morgan docks, which are refined product storage. Now, one could wonder, and maybe come to a conclusion that, well, why would you bring it over to, refined storage tanks, okay, which is right next to the water, when that's where the barges come in now. And one possibility is that maybe this oil is going to be shipped overseas. The processed oil is going to be shipped overseas. So it's a concern in terms of where the end product goes. Now the pipeline runs through, again, parts of New York, parts of New Jersey, into environmentally fragile sources. The northern part of New Jersey is interlaced with a numerous number of springs, rivers, and some of the springs, the small tributaries of the rivers, okay, happen to be trout categorized, meaning they're environmentally friendly enough to be able to support trout on a natural basis. And if it comes down the east side of the Ramapo Ridge, okay, it would affect the Ramapo River. When it crosses over Skyline Drive, it affects the Wanacue River. And then the Wanacue joins with the Pequannock. And then in Wayne, you have the Ramapo meeting the Pequannock to meet the Pompton River, which then flows into the Passaic. Now we've been blessed with a lot of nice rain recently, okay? But when we have droughts, there are big pumping stations in Wayne that pump up the Pompton River back up to the Wanacue Reservoir. These have been there for decades, okay? And during dry season, okay, the water was pumped back up, so there's enough water in the Wanacue Reservoir that they can distribute it to other peoples that rely upon the Wanacue Reservoir for use. Now, these are the next picture shows a graph or a plot of the towns that are involved. Okay, there's roughly about 30 towns that are involved. And the Chatham, which I show on there once, apparently there were two sections of Chatham, Chatham Borough and Chatham Township. So but it's on there twice. But it comes in at the northern part of New Jersey into Mahwah, and then right across the border, the first town it hits in the New York side, okay, is Sloatsburg. But it runs down, and the keying on the map, you can look at it if you go to the website. The various towns that have resolutions are in one color. Towns that have passed ordinances are in another color, and towns that have passed both, okay, are also distinguished from one another. And this is the split down here in Scotch Plains, where part of it goes to the refinery and part of it goes to these docks that are near the water here. So a lot of towns that goes through. Now, the danger of this oil is I don't know if you're familiar with in 2013, the Loch Megantic train that went off in that town. It was carrying a load of about 70 cars, and some number of those cars went off the rail, okay, in the downtown area, and it burned half the town, half the main street of town within 2 or 3 days, killed 47 people, and the rest of the town, rest of downtown, had to be destroyed afterwards because of oil contamination. So you'll see the third bullet, that's a severe corrosion, okay, in tank cars and joints, which same seems like it could happen also in pipelines. Bakken oil has a flammability point as low as 68. And during a spill in the Edbridge, okay, they discovered dangerous levels of hydrogen sulfide, which is a toxic material 24 times over the limit. So whether it's going north to south or south to north, the material that's being carried, okay, is very dangerous. This is a sketch of the water supply, and I'm going to have to get out here to look at the map. And I'll speak a little louder. But this is the green, okay, of the Highlands watershed, and the people that receive 75% of the water. And it turns out this is an old map, which is great for me to be here today because I met a fellow from the Highlands. Okay, it says because he had a map that said the area I grew up in, Hudson County, his was blue. So today, the legend, he also changed the colors. But this area today receives 90 to 95% of its water from the Highlands, up in Hudson County. And it's amazing, down here, even in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, okay, some portion of Cherry Hill also receives part of their drinking water from the Highlands. But there's 5.4 million residents in New Jersey. okay, that are at risk. That's more than half the population of New Jersey. And we mentioned that these rivers that are at risk, okay, whether you're coming down the east side of the Ramapone near Route 202, or the west side of the Ramapone near Ringwood Avenue. Okay, these three arteries, they both feed the river. And besides feeding the rivers, this drainage system also feeds certain aquifers. Okay, there are underground aquifers to the east, okay, that feed that area, and there's also aquifers down in the Chatham area. So there's aquifers that feed, again, hundreds, thousands of people, not just from the Wanacue and Monksville Reservoir. Now, some of the other, unfortunately, ingredients that get their chip down with this oil, okay, are the we talked about a very strong interconnection between various water sources. Now, typically, we understand the pipeline shutoff valves would be 10 miles apart from each other. Okay, and if I had a 2-foot diameter pipe, and at 10 miles, okay, it would contain 29,000 barrels of toxic fluid. So I got a 10-mile section and a 2-mile pipe. It's 29,000 barrels. Now, sometimes it's, there are 42 gallons in a barrel. Okay, so you're talking, over 1 million gallons, okay, in that pipeline. Now, fortunately, hopefully somebody will catch it. But it turns out most of the pipeline leaks that are detected are not by the very few rangers that we have to be able to look at it. They're caught by local people who happen to be walking in the woods or smell something funny that's happening. Those are the people that catch the majority. The crude oil contains this combination, BTEX, benzene, toluene, ethylene, and xylene. And benzene, the EPA's safety factor for benzene, the goal is 0, because it's very toxic, okay, to the environment. It causes birth defects, and it causes cancer and blood disease. And if we have a spill and it happens in a particular town, Pilgrim offers no indemnification. In other words, it claims no responsibility for the spill. So it doesn't pay for the spill. Who pays for the spill? Eventually, we do, either through higher taxes or whatever, but Pilgrim offers no indemnification. So it's their profit, and our loss. That's the way it's worked on Wall Street. That's the way it would work here. So fresh water trumps oil. And like the bid says, water is life. There were you can divide up some of the short-term ill effects, okay? We know it's bad for long-term wise, okay, but short-term wise, you can get dizzy, nausea, problem breathing, a whole gamut of things, my gosh. And the target organs for the crude, okay, the whole body, the blood system, lymphatic system, nervous system, reproductive system, and benzene, of course, is a known carcinogen, which is there. And again, if you take this oil and after it's been processed, and you bring it to the stations that are supposed to purify it, it's how well do you have to purify it to meet certain government standards? And then what happens, if you meet those standards and you drink it and you get sick? On the pipelines themselves, this page just summarizes some of the concerns of the damage, okay, and how many incidents of pipeline. The 10-year average was 631 incidents per year, resulting in 97, almost 100,000 barrels. Again, that would be 4 million gallons per year. Multiply that number by 40. The estimates that the pipeline has a 50% probability of experiencing a major leak, each pipeline. But, 50, that's an enormous probability. You know, if you start using conditional probability, you'd wind up that every pipeline is going to wind up failing. So it's a terrible high figure, 50% probability. Now, only 1/5 of the national pipeline system has been inspected by this organization or its partners since 2006. And that's probably a high number, right? Because we've got EPA restrictions and people that are going to be looking into the EPA to as part of maybe tax relief for the rich people. So 135 inspectors oversee 2.6 million miles of pipeline. So each inspector is responsible for roughly 24,000 miles, which is the circumference of the Earth. And the bottom bullet, the Wall Street Journal found that the pipeline portions with detection systems, less than 20% of the spills were discovered by monitoring controls. So we incorporate these new monitoring controls, but again, it seems that it rests upon the people to find out whether you got a spill or not. This is the slide I was talking about earlier in terms of the ratio of oil spilled per oil carried, and over different 5-year time periods. But the pipelines are in this the first column, okay, in each of these groups. And again, if you look at what tank barges and trails are, okay, they're this one and this bar. So the only one that consistently beats in terms of how much spills per what's carried, okay, is the black one, okay, which happens to be tanker trucks. So when you look at this picture, you have to discount the safety numbers that Pilgrim tossed around, because there are far more oil spills far more oil spillage, okay, from pipelines than there are from trucks or barges. Now, how can we put a stop to this? Raising awareness. Again, I mentioned that I think a couple of times, but I really think that's the important thing in terms of bringing it to the public's attention so they can talk to their political people, trying to educate landowners, not just landowners who are immediately affected. Most of those people, but not all of those people, as it turns out, really know the danger of what's happening. Maybe because they've been exposed to gas pipelines in the past, okay, as opposed to now it's going to be oil pipelines. Princeton Hydro was hired by the Sierra Club to review all DEP documents, so they're a pretty high-powered company. I know Wayne Township has dealt with them in certain water issue problems that we have had in Wayne. And then there are other items, okay, that are on that list. But the big thing is, I think, is number one and number two in terms of trying to put a stop to the pipeline. And that's where you can also, if you could spread the word, okay, if you've got a sense here that the danger, okay, of our drinking water, okay, of northern New Jersey, okay, it's going to affect not only us but the rest of the state. And one other thing, let me mention that in Wayne County, Pennsylvania, has sued the government because they want to be allowed to frack on the Delaware. Right now, Pennsylvania is restricted from fracking, just like all states are restricted from fracking on the Delaware River Basin. But this particular county, which is probably about 40 or 50 miles northwest of Sussex County, okay, has a law case going for it, which would be, and that water supply is for like 10 million people. It goes all the way down, through southern New Jersey, Philadelphia, including that portion of Pennsylvania. So that will be a real issue if that's allowed to happen. But I just bring it to your attention. So when you hear Pilgrim Pipeline and you hear about fracking, there could be fracking, worst case wise, it could be fracking in New Jersey. And when you hear about the backwater that comes up, okay, that's also a dangerous issue in terms of they continue to bring it into New Jersey for processing. And that's the message. Thanks for your attention. Is there any comments or questions or suggestions you might have for the people? Yes?
Okay. I have two questions about the Albany. How does the crude oil get from North Dakota to Albany?
I'm sorry, guys on trains.
Okay. Now, why does it go to Albany? I missed that part.
Because the way they're transporting is in now, by volume is on Hudson River. Albany is on Hudson River.
That's the only reason it goes to Albany, is so they can bring it down to barges on the Hudson? Okay. So if they're taking it by train, why don't they just go to?
I don't know if I don't know how the train tracks are set up. I know the train tracks right now are set up in local Bergen County. Yeah, there's like Philadelphia. I don't know if you is there a path there also somehow in New Jersey? There might be. But people have contracts. All companies have contracts with refineries. It gets split up that way. They have long-term contracts where you have a little.
So they just happen to have like a freight train that goes to Albany from North Dakota, and that's part of the contract, and then they send it by barge.
Yes.
And then after they refine it in London, they bring it back to Albany, is that?
Yes, on volume also.
To be used.
To be used in the northeastern part of the United States.
Okay, thanks.
In terms of reaching out to people and politicians, who's in contact in the office?
The question was, who would we contact in the DEP, and what politicians would we contact? Jerome, would you answer that?
Right, well, I'll try to answer that question. Right, so at this time, the permits have not been submitted in New Jersey for the Pilgrim project, okay? So it's still a proposed project. Permits have been submitted in New York State, but that's irrelevant to us. The DEP has a limited number of aspects that they would be concerned about relative to the pipelines. It's not a pervasive, all-encompassing type of review. It's a very focused review. There's ongoing communication with the commissioner of the DEP and with other entities. At this point, though, we're more or less just trying to make sure that we're aware of when permits might be submitted and be ready and poised to actually analyze them and comment on them at that time. So that's a partial answer to your question.
What about if we want to apply certain politicians, people, certain political groups that we were concerned about before the Pilgrim process? Who would we address that?
Well, I think that even your state assemblymen, your state senators, I mean, those are appropriate channels, and those kind of contacts are going on routinely. Rich mentioned earlier that there's conversations going on with gubernatorial candidates at this time. So to plug into some of those with the other volunteer groups that are leading that effort, and we can connect you. CAP is actively engaged in that kind of advocacy, so the people from the Coalition Against the Pilgrim Pipeline would be glad to have your name to be involved in those kind of meetings. So that's another possible avenue. I want to, just from the climate standpoint from 350, I'll just make a couple of comments on our part. It's still a proposed project. This has not been approved by New York State or by New Jersey. Because it's oil, it will not have much federal oversight as natural gas pipelines do through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So it's a proposed project. New Jersey will be an appropriate place. Our governments, our towns will be appropriate places to try to push back on this project. So again, it's proposed. It's not approved. It is not going into the ground yet. So the opportunity is ripe for it to be stopped. And frankly, from my perspective, it represents a poor investment of social capital, whether it's financial or intellectual or anything, because we should not be making investments like this. We must stop doing these kind of 30-year investment programs to continue using Bakken oil. And again, the final comment I'll make is that as a climate advocate, my worldview is very simple. If it makes the climate worse, it cannot continue. And in my mind, whether we're barging it or piping it or whatever, Bakken needs to stop. So again, it's a very simplistic view, but that's part of what motivates me to oppose this kind of project. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to comment on the climate change issue with fracking. Much has been made about fracked gas being cleaner than other fuels because it's less carbon dioxide. But in the fracking process, there's 200 trucks coming and going, they burn diesel. There are high pressure, 10,000 horsepower pumps, up to 4, used at each well site. And they burn diesel. And, you know, right down the line, transporting, there's more to it than just the fracking. So there's a lot of greenhouse gases associated with fracking. It's not the cure.
Charlie's bringing up a good point. I mean, methane is a much worse global warming
Well, that too, I was
compound
just
than-
talking about the carbon
than
dioxide.
carbon dioxide.
The
right?
methane is even worse.
And the methane wants to leak. It wants to get out of the pipes. It wants to get out of the well. Once we let it out of the earth, it wants to get into the atmosphere. So it's a hard fuel to handle in that regard.
But that's a good point, because you have methane wells, okay, like the Benton and Marcellus, and then you have back-end wells
Yeah,
for the oil. But a lot of times gas comes up
yeah.
in the back-end
Also,
wells,
right.
and they consider that to be an unnecessary byproduct.
It's a waste.
A waste.
They flare it.
So they just let it escape into the atmosphere. And for the first 2 decades, methane in the atmosphere is 80 times worse than carbon dioxide in terms of global warming.
But just all of the diesel fuel
Just all the
burned
diesel, yes.
to do the fracking,
Yes.
and to make by the way, to make all those steel pipes, because fracking 2 miles worth of pipe, it's not like the old days, a conventional well only used 3,000 feet.
Right.
Now you got 12,000
Yeah.
feet.
You gotta look at the
Steel.
overall, you gotta look at the overall
Yeah.
system, beginning to end.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Yes?
I just have a quick question. Say the pipeline isn't built. Is it worth it to have more trucks come into this phase, transporting this oil, more trains coming in? Like you were talking about how the one blew up. From my understanding, the Bakken, I think it was a train or the truck, blew up because it was mislabeled as a different. Because I was reading up on it, and that's what a bunch of articles said. That was mislabeled as a different substance.
The train blew up. You know the story of the train, the issue about the train? This secured the tank, the cars? It's just a long story. But anyway, the engine was parked with 70 cars behind it. And it became loose. Okay, and it ran down the hill and came off the track. I don't probably get anything with the sort of that point.
Yeah.
But your point is that, you know, should we, would we better off leading with barges rather than build a pipeline? The barges have been there for how many years? Okay. But
Are they, I'm considering because the pipeline, it seems like they're creating the pipeline because they need to transport more oil, that the barges can't.
well, that's interesting. You look at, it's like what's Phelps, Animal Farm, 1984, they want to call it, okay? But if you look at Pilgrim's statement, statements that are made, the only reason you want to build a pipeline is so it doesn't have to go on barges. It's only barges, so it's only going to replace the barges, because during Hurricane Sandy, there was a shortage of people couldn't move barges on the Delaware because of high water table. Probably the currents were too fast for the barges to handle it, and that's what they claim. Now, we've done further studies of it in terms of how much oil was shipped by barges over the last so many years, and it turns out it doesn't seem like very much was shipped. It doesn't seem like what the pipeline would replace what was shipped. Double what was shipped or could have been shipped. So there's sort of a disconnect. You don't get the whole story no matter where you look. But your question again really has to do with
The balance between how much oil is shipped by a pipeline versus if it's worth it to bring in more trucks, more cars, more trains, more everything in the margins. Is it worth it between that, the CO2 that's being emitted from that as well?
The issue with pipeline is we want to get off of fossil fuels. A pipeline is in the ground for 30+ years. A barge and a truck and whatever else you use can stop tomorrow. It had to.
Yes, hi.
And another point is that a lot of it's really for export. Like you mentioned, the 2 different sites, and it's not really clear yet how much is meant for export, but it's a lot. They get much more money by exporting it. So that we are risking to put pipelines in the ground to all of what Rich has said, would possibly it be for export. By definition, that's a third world country. We describe raw materials for export to those countries.
It's a very good question. I mean, that's a kind of question that sort of demands and deserves, a good amount of conversation.
I have a question. I heard that a year ago that the Tappan Zee Bridge hasn't been paid for yet, the Tappan Zee Bridge, and that there was a rumor that Pilgrim Pipeline might want to make a deal to run the pipeline across the Tappan Zee Bridge, and then they would pay for the rest of the Tappan Zee Bridge. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything.
I don't know if there's any refineries on the east side of it.
As transport for getting down to New Jersey.
Oh, you mean as a brine?
Yes.
Oh, I'm
yes. Yes. You have, okay. I heard it for a while.
Really? Oh, who knows? Who knows? Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I remind you to check it out. Tell your friends how bad this is. Come to participate in the website. Go to the website. Stop Pilgrim Pipeline. A lot of information there. Okay? But it's something that and it's stuff that's worse than this. It's stuff that's worse than tossing. That is the worst of the worst.
Well, another point is this is literally our backyards. I mean, I don't know, when you saw the map there, I live in Wayne, that's just one town over from Compton Lakes and Oakland and other places where this would be going through. So this is, the Dakota access was thousands of miles away. This is our backyard, literally. So not only is it close enough for us to be active, but it's our backyard, where you might want to live and so forth.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.